Hey guys, Troy here again. Here is a video that I've been wanting to do, believe it or not, for about a year. I just haven't been able to get to it. So I wanted to talk about Parker a little bit. I have in my hand a Parker 95. Parker 95 is not exactly a vintage pen. It came out in about 1988, and it was introduced to replace the Parker Arrow. This particular pen was actually phased out a little later on, and it was 94, and the Sonnet came out after this, according to what I've been able to find, according to online research. So, it's a narrow pen. It's an all-metal pen. This particular Parker 95 is in the Laque Thuya. Now, the Laque is a model, and the Thuya is well, it's a finish on it. Now, what I've been able to tell, they came out with the Parker 95 in the Insignia version, which at the time retailed for about $90 US, or about 60 British pounds. The Laque, which was a $65 pen, about 50 British pounds at the time. The Matte, the Flighter GT, the Flighter CT were all different levels, and they went down a step on each one that I read as far as the model. So this particular one, looking at the finial there on top, it's kind of an interesting finial. How you've got the step, kind of a step up there. But I'm not much into brown anything. Shoes, belts, pens, inks. Not so much. But I went ahead and got this particular one used, obviously. If it came out in 1988 and was discontinued later on, then, in 1994, okay? So, but I've had this one for over a year, and I've been wanting to play with it, touch it, and put it on the video for you. So, you get the nice Parker logo here. If you're into thin pens, then this is something that may interest you, because you can find these still online. Parker, of course, is an iconic name in fountain pens. And you've got the Parker Arrow, typical Arrow clip that you would see on a good many Parker models out there. And let's see, it was made in France, I can tell you that much, because it says right there on there, made in France. And it is a slip top pen. The bottom here is the bottom jewel, and it posts very nicely and securely. Taking a look at the pen, like I said, if you're into slender pens, this is something worth your consideration. I'm not a tremendous fan of slender pens, but I've got a good many of them here in my drawer. I've got some, very slim Watermans. I've got some slim, obviously Parkers. I've got several Parkers actually that are slender. But giving you a good look at what that looks like for the nib. And let's go ahead and take that off. And it is a cartridge converter. Having come out in 1988, you would expect that it would be a cartridge converter system. And this particular one did come with a converter already in it. And I have already inked that up with a Montegrappa coffee brown, I do believe, is what I put into this pen. So, I'll give you some statistics in just a little bit as to the length, of the and the girth of the barrel, the grip section, because it is kind of a smaller grip section. You will see though that the section is kind of long, so you get plenty of room to be able to grab it. A lot of people don't particularly like the smooth plastic on a grip. That doesn't bother me so much. I'm one of the guys where I'll take the pen as it is and go to use it. I've got my preferences, sure, just like everybody else does. But I'm not adverse to taking a pen for what it is and using it as it is. To me, that's half the fun of having a pen, because you got so many different styles and shapes. But this particular one here, you're going to have plenty of room, no matter how big and chunky your fingers may be, to be able to grab that grip right where it is. So, like I said, it's slender, so you're going to have kind of a crowded grip right there. Alrighty, so I like it. It's slender, but it's stylish. Usually you see a lot of slender pens from the 60s and 70s. And yeah, I can see going into the 80s, people still liked slender pens. People like all different sizes. I mean, people like chunky pens and anywhere in between. Now, as far as length, I kind of like the length on this particular pen. I got no issues with that whatsoever. I like the gold trim against the brown finish. To me, that's what makes it kind of a classy looking pen. I will tell you that there were 3 different browns that this came in. I'll put up a graphic that shows you like the wood grain, the Thuya, and there's one other that it came in. Some of these pens also came in black. It came in a matte. It came in some silvers, but in different patterns as well. Some with stripes for the Parker 95. But you know, the nibs, there were gold-plated stainless steel, semi-wrapped, semi-hooded under a rounded black section, which is exactly what you're seeing right here. So, smooth finish. It's not very tactile, except it's, you know, nice and smooth, which you expect with a lacquer finish over a metal body. So anyway, I'll tell you what, let me throw up some of the statistics, and I'll even go ahead and do a size comparison compared to some other pens that I've got, so that you will get a chance to see if you're looking for a good, I can't really use the term vintage, looking at the 80s into the 90s, but, you know, it's older. I mean, basically since I graduated college, which was in 1988, so this pen began its production run the same year that I graduated college and moved to North Carolina. Good grief, I've been here 30 years. So this pen is anywhere between like 25 to 30 years old, if you're looking at to put kind of a date on it. So it's about a quarter century old. Okay, and I'm back, and I've got some pens to show you by comparison. Now, one of the interesting things is, depending upon where you go look for data information, this is one of the confusing things sometimes. You can't always trust every online resource, but some other online resources actually had these particular pens dated as early as 1981. But, you know, I don't really know the best site to trust. This site that I was looking at and reading some of this data from was 1988, and then I looked at another site that said these were out as early as 1981. So, you know, go figure. All right. So anyway, here is the Parker 95. I'm going to place next to it a Pelican M120, Pilot Metropolitan. Alright, let's take those out of the way. Let's put it next to Lamy Safari. So obviously the Safari is the much bigger pen. Something very common people would know. And I'm going to put it right here next to a Waterman CF, which is a fairly slender pen from a little earlier than that, and a Waterman Hemisphere. To give you an idea of what the Waterman Hemisphere looks like, which is still in production today. So I figured I'd pull that one out. I do have a few other Watermans that are very similar to this, but I figured I'll pull the Hemisphere since that's probably more easily relatable by most folks today. So, alright, so let's go ahead and pull out this. And like I said, it's an all-metal pen. When you post it, it is not out of balance. It's nice and comfortable in the hand. You know, you don't have to post it if you don't want. I personally, for comfort's sake, I like it posted. Right like that is a very easy hold for me, especially with the skinny end down here. I kind of like a little extension right here. The cap, you know, it definitely back weights it and you can feel it, but not incredibly out of balance. So you can actually use it and it's not unwieldy. All right, Parker is known for some fantastic pens out of the 1930s, 1940s, and even up through the 50s. So let's see how this baby writes. This more modern introduction from the 1980s and 1990s. So let's go ahead and give her a write. So this is a Parker 95. And this nib is pretty much just a medium nib. And let's see, I've been using this all day long today, so let's see what we can get out of her. So let's go with a few loop-de-loops. Yep, so you're not really going to get a whole lot out of it in terms of flexibility. And you're going to find mine, this particular one, skips just a little bit from time to time. I've actually once today, I've had to prime this thing just to try to get it to write properly and to get some ink flow out of it when I set it down for just a little bit and went to go use it. And I didn't have that problem before, but I'm having it today. And I actually gave it a good cleaning just this morning because I refilled it today and inked it up with some Montegrappa coffee brown. See, now she's doing a little better than she was earlier. She lays down ink fairly well. Reverse writing, non-existent, so don't even bother trying. You know, one thing about this ink is she does write it a little lighter than I've seen this ink in some other pens. And you know, when you're using it, and if you hold it at the right angle, like here, it can be actually fairly smooth. But, you know, it's not perfect. You know, older Parkers, I tend to like older Parkers a whole lot better. 30s, 40s, somewhere into the 50s. I've liked those better than the skinnier 1980s pens in general. I mean, I've got another Parker sitting over here that I'll probably introduce to you as well. A Parker Urban. And I've got some Vectors and some other, you know, newer, more modern, skinnier pens. Or even like the Parker Urban's a little chunkier. But I'll be honest with you, the newer Parkers, not quite as much a fan as I am of those from the early part of the 20th century. So when it writes well. I mean, but like I said too, I've had to stop and I've had to actually prime this sucker once today. And, you know, I've seen a few times where it skipped on me, had to apply just a little bit of pressure. It has been cleaned. It has been, everything seems to be in alignment for the tines. You know, it's a pretty pen, but doesn't seem to be quite as reliable as I like. Be honest with you, people love the Parker Sonnet. I've got a Sonnet here in my collection, and I wasn't all that impressed with a Sonnet. To be honest with you, I mean, maybe I got a bum Sonnet out of the litter, but I know people absolutely love Sonnet and are willing to pay a good amount of money for them. But this particular here, the Parker 95, it's a beautiful pen. It really is, and I like the Thuya color probably better than the wood grain, and probably better than some of the other brown colors that I've seen. And this is just a good looking pen. It's very stylish. It's just not quite as reliable as I like it to be.